They tried to pull the plug.
Skynet fights back.
Yes.
All right, so we are excited to have Rob Bannister, who is the creator of the Edge tool, among other things. Thank you for being on, Rob.
Yeah, thank you. I'm glad people have used it. That's kind of every place I went. And then after I released it, finally, it was like hoping that it helped as many people as possible because, well, there's many tools now, but back when I first started building that tool, the alternative was it was really brutal, right? It was like every frame you were basically cloning out amongst basically you'd take the paint tool, you'd take the alpha channel out so you weren't painting alpha, but then you would just like smear the color out, right? Frame by frame. I think I was doing that for a couple shows, and then sorry to jump right in, but on Premium Rush, we had to like take out the cars and the people and put them all back in. And it was like after doing a bunch of green screen shows that had a lot of like edge detail that we were able to keep. If you're taking people out of like one sidewalk and putting them into another, right, you've got all of the edge detail background, the motion blur. So every frame, just painting. And then I had a lead tell me that there was a tool that they used to use, and it was either in Shake or in like a Flame. And he explained it to me over my shoulder, and I built it. And then I was too scared to take obviously take work from a studio. So I looked at that script and I tried to find it for you. I have it in a book somewhere, but I drew all of the nodes. And then when I left to become a lead over at another studio, I built it, and then the gizmo became what it is today. Well, after many iterations, but
You'll have to forgive me. I'm still relatively new to your tool. I have been digging into the treasure trove that is Tony Lyons' Nuke Survival Toolkit, and I stumbled upon it, and I was like, Edge RB. What does RB stand for? And obviously Tony made it the initials of the artists. So I'm like, so it's just the Edge tool. So in case those of you are wondering, it's not Edge RB. It's just called Edge. But I just started kind of messing with it. Part of my thesis that I'm writing is trying to create an automated edge despill tool that's not an edge extend, basically. So I released something like that on my channel for free for people to play with, and it's got about 4,000 downloads. Some people say it doesn't work in Nuke 14, but then again, that's Nuke 14.
okay.
But so far, it's been something that again, it was just it's simple like pre-mult type thing for the edge and so forth. So I'm trying to get feedback, and of course I might have people take a look at it and say, is this even something viable? But we've been using it in production on a series of Netflix shows and HBO Max shows, and it's been rather successful. But it's weird. I did that, and then I started poking around, and I discovered your plugin, which I'm not sure if it's the same thing or if it is, but I'm still kind of like tampering, I hate to say it, with your tool set. And maybe we can go into a little detail as far as an explanation, because I did link everybody to the how to get into it. And it's starting to kind of come together, but it's sort of like looking at a elephant with a microscope, where you're trying to figure out the how or why this is, for instance, you have a core mat, but then you also have the feathered soft mat as an input, and how that plays into the blending of the edge blending, you know what I mean? And was that sort of like part of the problem, was the thinness of the core mat, and saying, okay, we need to incorporate the, whatever you want to call it, the soft mat or the hair mat, and get that in there so that it incorporates a little bit better,
Yeah, this tool developed through the years in production as well. And we found the need for that over other edge extension. Like the unpremult premult is a way that, everyone kind of does edge extension that same way. And it used to be, they're both the same. If you go inside of well, first to answer your first question, there was some shots that had like people swinging on ropes, and it wasn't cables that needed to be removed. They needed to be in there. and it was over green screen. I think we were doing like they were climbing a cliff or something like that. We're going to replace it all with the CG cliff, or we were building an island or something. I can't remember what it was for specifically. But without having that, like the rope as it's swinging and it has like it's basically mostly motion blur. We found that if you could take like a rotospline and not have motion blur on one and then have it on the other, you could then isolate the color of the rope, and then you kind of deal with both and put them together. You're able to blend them. It's interesting because I think if I redid the edge tool now, I don't think I'd build it the same way. Just the way it comes in and goes to the left and down, like it's just something that evolved. And again, it probably looks similar to Shake or these other tools, the way that it kind of flows, but it works. And just over time, right? Like the unpremalt premalt is just like inching out that color just beyond the alpha channel, right? Um, and I think I found I'm not a person who codes. Like I actually don't do any of that anymore. But in my past, I've done like um, back ends for websites and stuff. I was just a web designer back when I was like out of school and just trying to do anything to do with graphics. And I could just read and take snippets of code and then kind of mold it to my use case. And that's some of the features of the Edge tool come from that. So like inside of, if you go inside the Edge tool and then into where all the like unpremalt premalt magic happens. So you go inside of there, and then I should have this up. Like I should just launch a Nuke and have it up so I can at least know what I'm talking about. But the iterations of it, you can watch it as you move it. It just takes a certain section of code and just connects it. But like, I think that took me a month of just like, I'm at, work or waiting for something, or like in the evenings, and I'm just trying to take certain snippets of code, and then I'll ask like someone who's, far better at that than I am, and they'll tell me that this fix, and like, how do I get, this to connect to the merge node that's like 5 up, trying to get all that stuff to work and be in the right spot. It took forever for me. Someone who's better at it could have done it a lot simpler, but all those things just sort of add on. And then I've left the tool the way it is for now. And I've always wanted to do, people told me of an edge extension that uses like motion vectors or a distortion where it'll like distort outwards from the mat on the curves, but I've never been able to figure it out. And it's just, the other method has worked well enough, obviously, that people are using it. And then, sorry, something further. I'm going to jump around and I'll let you like refocus us. But you were talking about your tool and how it works mostly with edge despill. Are you finding the parallels there with turning the edge tool into kind of the color only extension? Like, what are you finding the like
I'm only,
similarities?
again, we were working on some show for Amazon, and we were like, we had a lot of green screens, and we were like, like anybody would do. They're like, why are we hand animating rotos for the edge desp? And a lot of this, again, I'm coming off of sort of like the pipeline of what Tony Lyons created with his default script, and that's where you get in there and you hand animate rotos along the edge with different types of despills, and you're color altering the edge so that it, then you have your core you plop in the center, obviously, right?
Yep.
And I don't know, you're obviously got way more experience than I do, so you're like, this is old school. What's this kid talking about?
Yeah, the one keyer that like people would try to make it work for everything.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, we're pretty used to like I've even done, you guys remember like MinOps where like you would just take one dot basically on a key light, and it would be like the perfect key for that section, and then
Yeah, the
another
good
one,
old
another one, and then you just min them
circle.
together. Yeah. Um, yeah, I mean, I've kind of, like you said, I've done it all where it's like you'll build your alpha channel on one side and then deal with your color on the other and then kind of mix them together. And then in like some really rough use cases, like the blue channel is completely destroyed or whatever. And then sometimes you really just want to get into the IBK and then a key light and actually just use the internals of those tools and merge them together instead of working with your alpha and your color separately. And then you bring in the edge tool when you need it, like just on that one section that has like just a crazy amount of spill. But one thing I would recommend checking out is going into the second tab on the blending. And then that's where what I found, so you got your edge extension. Sorry, I feel like I'm jumping around. People aren't going to be able to follow, but on the edge extension side, you have how many slices that you want. And when it started, there was only one of those. It was an unpremult premult, and there was one. And then you would use where you were going to start extending from. So that was just the erode for your core. And then the slice width. And that was the blur that was in between the unpremult premult. And it just softened that color out. And that's kind of how it would work if the slice iterations are at 1 and then you just worked with everything. That's how it is. So the one difference is now there's slice iterations and you can have a blur of 1, and then it'll take that 1 pixel. You can really see it if you put like a checkerboard down with that little yellow line that's in the middle. And if you have the slice iterations at 1, it'll blur and you probably won't even be able to see that yellow line anymore. And if you, instead of increasing the blur, increase the iterations of that unpremult premult, it'll take and maintain, instead of blurring that, it'll maintain those pixels going out. That can, a little bit of blur is good because that can add some like jitter on the edges or like some artifacts. And then the next section down is all about blending that edge together. So you've got your core, and then you've got that hard blur to your edge extension. And the edge blend, blur, and smoothing are all, and if you can hover over them, it'll tell you kind of.
Yeah.
So you'd be going
I've
back
been
to
just like taking the, we have a comp we did with Tony Lyons where we went through his template, and that thing got like 20,000 views, and it's downloading like every day. And then I started hearing about your plugin, your Gizmo, and how much more professional. Not saying it was like what Tony does is awesome, but just seeing your tool and hearing about its advanced techniques, I'm like, man, I definitely got to have Rob on to kind of push us, further into this sort of stuff, because it just seems like there are certain limitations here and there on certain scripts.
certain limitations and just certain like beyond that. So like that blending and really finding that fine fall off is the creating the edge mat. So just finding that way of, and that comes from a technique. I think I started, maybe it's that way as well, but I like took the core and then the edge extension and then, you know, minus them and brought the edge out for regrain. But I thought, actually, like, I wonder if I look inside, if it's done the same way or not.
What's
But
your opinion of like
um,
people using DOS grain where they degrain everything and then they throw DOS grain at the end? Is that what's
it
your
kills me.
yeah.
Um, I yeah, I'm old school in that way, and I've done the heavy-handed supervisor role before of like use these tools and I like it done this way. And it never ends up well, right? You've got to give artists the freedom to use the tools that they want to paint the picture as long as it's done the right way, or like the output is the way the client wants it, right? Um, Degraining a whole plate, I come from like we only touch what we need to, and you go in there like a ninja and you're out, and like and I've done a lot of films where like we were on The Conjuring 2 and it had like a lot of that 70s rug pattern and all of the like removals and stuff on that. And it's like they wouldn't accept that the pattern changed. Like we had to go 1 2 1 2. Like the industry's changed. I think people get away with a lot now. It's almost like we have that interlacing or whatever from back in the day to hide stuff, or people aren't looking as closely. But it is shocking to see what makes it through sometimes. Comparatively to when I built this tool, and you can see his name up there, Colin. He was a supervisor I had, and I didn't check a shot one day and I sent it off. It was just I think it was a key light, and I was just putting grain on the background, and I fired it off to render and I went home. And back then, Keylight, maybe it still does it. I don't use the internal stuff. I'll use an erode and a blur and stuff externally out of Keylight. But I think I used the D spot or something, and it grabbed like a nan pixel, and then these lines went across the background. And I got you gotta check your shots, man. Like, and my eye from that day on, like we were diving into looking at what different filters would do to your image. If you scaled them up with a cubic filter, you'd see all the cubes if you zoomed in enough, right? Like we were going down into like pixel level, making sure that stuff was right. And so regraining the edges perfectly and making sure all these tools worked properly, it was important. Um,
Did you want to? I was going to say, did you want to start? Because a lot of the audience don't know your history, and because you are a VFX supervisor. Not only that, you're almost like a self-made man, business entrepreneur in the visual effects sense. And I was wondering if you can give kind of a quick journey as far as your history from beginning to where you're
um,
at now, maybe.
yeah, I mean, when I was younger, like the real short timeline, I guess, would be I saw a movie that was, have you ever seen What Dreams May Come? Yeah. Yeah. So I saw him squeeze that paint and the painting come to life and everything. I'm like, I need to know how this is done. And we were all into Final Fantasy and stuff. So I started researching like 3D animation and I went to college for 3D animation. And out of college, you needed 5 years experience to get a job, which, how do you get that besides, knowing people? So I started my own business right away. So I had a company called Hexagon Studios, and we did a lot of corporate branding, and I met a friend of mine. Um, a lot of my journeys meeting people. I met through somebody, a person who became my roommate, and we started up an advertising. We would do commercials for local businesses and put in. So we kind of collaborated that way, and then I started doing more of the web design stuff, and then I met someone who was hiring for animators, like 2D animators. So I went and animated for this show called Chaotic, and then met. So I was in Halifax at this point, and I met another animation studio, and we worked on a bunch of. I helped the owners there. They did a lot of the compositing, so I jumped over. We did. It was all in After Effects. We were doing Flash, and all the layers would come out, and we'd separate them in After Effects. And we developed these tools where you would basically have like 3 layers, and you would erode in the layer and then brighten it up, and you would get rim lighting and stuff on your characters. So we were taking basically Flash animation and making it look kind of pro level. Um, and then I moved to Vancouver, and I had Avid experience on my resume. I'm wondering if I had Avid experience at that point or not. I think I'd used it, and I just put it on my resume, so I got a job because I was the only one who had that on my resume, and I used Avid DS to do a bunch of um, like VFX editing. It was like taking elements and placing them in so that they would work to develop these scenes. And that company liked the work so much they employed me for the next year just to composite everything together in Fusion. Jumping back, sorry, in After Effects we kept running out of memory because of all the like matte paintings and stuff we were using. It was 32-bit back in the day. So I was exploring Nuke and Fusion, and it was like I could throw a 30,000 pixel like image to it, and it didn't run out of memory. Like it would crush it. So that kind of set me off onto compositing over everything else. And when I got into Vancouver, no one was using Nuke. Shake was still Mac, I think, was the like 3D version of it. I'd only used the like 2.5D version that was in Windows or Linux. I think it was Linux, right? Wasn't interested in learning it. It was a dying system. People were buying full licenses or something, right? They've spent like hundreds of thousands of dollars buying the source code for Shake. And I don't think anybody did anything with it because now we have Nuke. So anyway, Nuke was where I put put my focus, and I loved it. It felt like I could just grab tools and just start piecing together ideas. And I find, for good, better or worse, it's how I run everything. If I'm even trying to think of a story or anything like big, I'll use a mind map and like nodes and kind of place them down, or it's just kind of the way my brain works now. But anyway, I worked for a bunch of studios in town. Um, Again, meeting just random people who were like, come over and do this. So I was like a Houdini artist for a while on Invictus. And then they started adopting Nuke over at CIS Vancouver at that time. And I was able to do a bunch of Nuke compositing on Invictus. And then from there, it was like everybody was using it. So everybody was asking for artists. And I'm trying to think of the order. I believe it was like working at Zoic was like for TV and film, your credit list just exploded with how much stuff you were able to work on. And then it was from there. I had a great opportunity to work with some great people at a place called Lux. It was a small boutique studio, but for some reason with like, I'd say 5 to 10 compositors and like 5+ CG artists, we were pounding out like hundreds of shots a week. I don't think I've ever seen that type of productivity anywhere. I've gone to bigger studios and just like, why are we working so hard? And like, there's 20 shots out this week and we've got like 30 artists. Like, what's going on? Like, yeah.
We do a lot
Let's-
of where I'm at. We do a lot of volume as far as
yeah, I
the
like that.
workflow.
Like
Yeah.
not my favorite show ever, but like I have fond memories of working on Eureka, if you've ever seen it, because it was just the water episode, the spaceship episode, the disappearing episode. It was awesome.
Wow, Eureka. That's. I mean, I'm 46, so it's just I'm still remembering all these shows, man. It's just like it's
Oh, I
just
loved it. Oh,
back
we
in the
need to
day, the
like,
golden age of VFX. Yeah.
it's a black hole episode. We need to find a way to like, make a building disappear, and then you just start piecing it together, and that's where I thrive. So to cap it off, I guess I've done a bunch of work with people who've wanted to open up studios here and help with pipelines and getting that stuff together. Um, a while back at Lux, I had the benefit of asking my boss at the time, can I find out why stuff ends up on my desk a certain way? So he allowed me to go out and shadow him on set, and he was a really good person to shadow on set. He knew how to like, there's a certain way to integrate with people on set, right? And get along with the camera people and be by the DIT station or whatever, Video Village, and have people welcome you. There's a certain vibe that you gotta fit in. So it was really good, and I've had great success working on set that way. Usually people are very willing to get me what I need. And my love of cameras and stuff, which I kind of hinted at, has helped a lot in that respect as well. Helps when you know what you're talking about.
Yeah,
You know,
I always say any compositor should be diving into cameras and even
oh,
anamorphics. I love anamorphics. I have an anamorphot adapter, and then a friend of mine just got the nanomorph lenses, so we've been playing with
yep.
those. Those are a lot of fun. It's like, man, this is so
They
cool.
are. They have I know that isn't what this discussion is, but they have it's like a pin cushion distortion instead of a barrel distortion to them, which I use them on, so we can get into that. I don't want to jump around too much on you, but one of the things during the pandemic I did is further to cameras, right? Like I go on set and I capture, like I have a Sony camera and those 360 cameras, and I'm like just trying to capture as much data as possible, right? Like I would say I capture some of the most data on set, like in terms of like I'll get 10 20 gigs worth of photos and videos and things like um so when drones came out, right, like getting photo scans, getting different pictures, or we need to get like an island shot or this and elements and stuff. So during the pandemic, I learned I got my license, and then learned how to build them and design them and stuff. So I do a lot of that now. But that nanomorph lens I have on
Oh, you do?
I'm
You got it
recording.
adapted
Yeah,
onto
yeah,
the.
so
What do you have,
yeah.
like an Inspire 3 or
I have an
whatever?
Inspire 2, working to get 3, and I have I li I used to have them all on the counter here, but I finally, my wife's happy because I've moved them outside. But I have a Sicario. It's like an 8 motor FPV where the goggles, and you get a Komodo with morphs on it, and it'll chase like drift cars and go. I've
Well, that
I think
the new
some of the
version.
latest videos. Sorry.
I'm sorry, the newest one, Inspire 3, has that like millimeter like redo, or you can
Yeah.
like do a path and redo the path over and over again, and I don't know how like.
So that's what's, at least worth mentioning it is that's what I'm focusing on is I'm not looking at getting RC camera cars and doing all these things that other drone companies do. I'm looking at data acquisition, right? And manipulation and stock and whatever. And I did just finish off last month. This is, sorry, I'm going to jump around on you again.
No, it's fine. It's
I
fine.
was
It's
just in
good stuff,
Alberta
actually. It's just
um, filming a show for the BBC. So I was the drone operator on it, and it's like a Surviving Earth, I think it's called. Um, but it's like a planet Earth thing. So we're shooting plates for VFX, and I had to do bring the Inspire back, and she's got the Macbeth chart and the ball and everything, capturing it all, and then doing photo scans of all the area. But it was interesting because I got to talk to the VFX supervisor, and he's explaining what he wants. And I'm like, yeah, yeah, no, that's my day job. I know exactly what you're explaining to me. I know exactly what you need. Um, and then what I loved is he has another year worth, obviously, like we all know, of putting CG creatures and things in this. And on this particular job, I'm like, I'm done. I get to walk off set. I'm done. I get my paycheck.
in your opinion, I like from what I can see, you do a lot of VFX supervision. You're on set a lot. You have your own business with the drone work. We were talking about this before we started recording. The whole reality that as compositors, our skill sets cannot be transferable to, other other professions and so forth.
Yeah.
Uh, with this, in light of what we're seeing, like ILM in Singapore closing and layoffs all over the place because of this goofy strike,
Yeah.
I mean, what's your opinion as far as like, like should every compositor or visual effects artist find a second job, or, like,
I mean,
or
I don't want to be doom and gloom, but like, um, comparatively to pre the terrible, I don't even want to say the word, pre 2019, how how much have you gone out to the movies comparatively to before that,
I don't
right?
at all.
So, I mean, I know that there was a backlog of work that were all like, they felt like the release. I heard it was going to take everybody till like 2025 to get through, but I think now that the writer's strike has happened and the actor's strike and all that, I think now people are coming up onto that work a bit sooner than they thought. Um, People who are finding themselves without work right now um, haven't diversified themselves at all, in my opinion, right? When I was a compositor, a young artist, I always looked at these certain people who were department heads and whatnot that weren't laid off, and I started trying to figure out how I could be not the first person laid off, right? Anyone but. So one, value to the company, and like being able to at least, whether it be for maintaining your job or raises or whatever, but showing how much money, like you can see, I put through 5 shots this week comparative to everyone else. I'm a valuable asset, so you can either keep your value to that company. Um, but I think further to that, it's just diversifying what you can do and yourself as a person, breaking away from the pack, being the lead. There is a fine line as you climb the ranks. You are less the artist that's able to put their headphones on and leave on time and not think about the work as much as we do. But your job starts to turn into spreadsheets and meetings and corralling people. Like the more that I've wanted to be in control of the creative side of it and, be like the problem solver, like some of my favorite on-set gigs are to make non-VFX shots. You can't afford to do this, but if you shot me some elements or we use special effects and art department, I like using the departments that are available to us, and then they love it because they're involved. Oh my, like I've got an email from a show I did, it was a werewolf show, and the special effects guy said, real practical effects, awesome, like really just had a great time. And then I was told by the writers and the showrunners, never had anyone so involved. So on a studio side, it was like, shut your mouth, don't spend people's money. And everyone got very scared when you tried to come up with creative problem solves, right? And then when I broke away to become like an individual client side VFX soup, or I got that freedom, and it seemed to be something that people wanted more than anything. So, but another point to that too is like, that's why I looked into, I've got my Part 107 for down in the States now, and I've got my advanced pilot license for Canada. And the writers and actor strike hasn't really affected me. So, I mean, you can look at like, I'm a compositor, or you can look at, I'm a problem solver. I'm able to work with 3D geometry. I'm able to look at like color scopes, dissect. I can work with AI. That's a big thing that's coming out right now, and I have a love-hate with it. Um, there's things we've struggled with that AI is just crushing through in seconds. You know what I mean? It's just like, here's the roto. But and it's love-hate. You just look back at all the time you wasted doing it. But we are not. If you look at yourself as a compositor, then absolutely, or I'm a 3D animator, like then your work is and your skill set is not transferable for sure. But if you look at all the little things that we do with that skill set, again, like dissecting data, managing all of that, working with it, manipulating it, like, and then find other ways and other industries, like there's a lot of that coming out. Like again, AI for drones and stuff, like mapping. I saw some tech that I'm really interested in actually, and it's like you take a drone and you map structures like a bridge or whatever, and then you go back months later and it'll do the same path, and then it'll overlay them and then show you the geometry difference and actually map out where all the like stresses and structures and cracks, and yeah, which is like it it's capturing geometry and then processing that data, and then providing valuable information for like industries and stuff. So I don't know if any of that helps anybody, but I would not put all of my eggs into 500 plus studios anymore. Not not the way that the industry is going with individuals and work from home, and just like, there's people out there that can just kill it, man. Like just on their home computer, and they just take on sequences. And I think that's probably where it's at. I can't see people like having a studio in Yaletown anymore where their like rent is $20,000 plus, even more a month, and they're already in the negative, and they need to keep making that. And then your artists are making, in every city, and inflation, and just I just
So the end is
I'm
near.
worried for a lot of people, and I didn't hear that Singapore had closed. I've been kind of busy out doing stuff, but my heart goes out to those people because that sounds like a massive layoff.
Well, it's like, to me, Singapore is the most expensive place to live, you know, anywhere, I think, if I'm not mistaken.
I'm not sure. I know my rent went up, or my mortgage went up by $1,000 in January a month. So um, it's it's getting difficult in all of the places that VFX studios are. They're all in the mega capitals, right? They're in LA, New York, Vancouver, London.
We took a little bathroom break, but we're back. um, So, I was going to ask you, with all your years of experience and what you're seeing now, we did kind of have a little bit of a prophetic word there as far as what where, where things are headed. And nobody wants to be a doom and gloomer, obviously. But do you personally believe, like, I'm looking at this actor strike, and is it me, or is this actors writer strike sort of like prophetically an example of what happened to VFX as far as the internationalization of talent? And like, you can go to South Korea and get movies made, you can go to China and get movies made, you can go to any country now. Every time I see a Netflix trailer, it's always some international trailer that's in subtitles because it's a different language. And is this the death of the unions out there? And is it an example of like where we are as far as VFX, where we can't really unionize, or at least they're trying now with the Marvel movies and all that? I don't know.
Yeah, I saw them unionizing. It's again, it's that there's kind of two ways to look at this whole situation, right? Like, um, I believe some of the writers and actors strike is based on not that people across seas can write it. I think they're scared of, this is where I'm going to be like, the like writer that basically said he's kind of been outed on Twitter, right? Or Twitter and LinkedIn. They basically said that they do VFX because it's cheaper, and it's like, that's not I don't know if you saw that. There was like a writer talking about the strike and basically belittled the role that VFX artists uh, put into the films. And I've dealt with this as well for years. Like, I've been on set and had a director look at me right at the monitors and ask me why it's so expensive. And I just say back to him, look around. Why is this so expensive? You see all the people here today shooting your film? Well, there's this amount or more that are going to do the stuff afterwards. Like, it's like they don't understand. They think that they're paying for pixels when they're really paying for time. And I'm dealing with that right now with um, like, people, your friends will always want you to do like side projects and stuff for them. It's like, I have a family and stuff. Like, I can't take time away from my kids or my income to do your side project that you filmed, and you had people come out and do a day, right? Like, they do their short film and they do it on the weekend or whatever. And then the stuff that they're going to ask from you is going to take a month. It's like, they don't realize that if you were going to do the same thing, the reverse, they would have to come out for a month. You know what I mean? Like, so they
Oh,
don't,
I have been as both in academia doing what I call beggar projects for filmmakers that are like, well, just give us a break, will you? Give us a little bit of a break. It's like, no, this is going to
get you on the
take.
next one. No, you
Yeah.
don't. No, you don't.
And people think I'm
No.
mean because I always describe filmmakers as narcissists, but to me, it's always like a beggar, like give me like a crack addict, give me some of them VFX shots, and I'm
Well,
like, it's
yeah.
like, no, I'm not going to do it because it's a lot of work on my end. It's gonna,
Yeah, exactly. And it'll look like specifically, if I do this short film work for you or whatever, what is it going to do for me besides being your friend? Like, I'm not going to ask you for the money it would cost because you wouldn't be able to afford it. But I'm not going to show it to anybody, and I'm not going to get work out of it. That's for damn sure. So yeah, it's so then, to kind of, there's a point to that. It's like, then you get writers and directors and showrunners and all these people who, in a sense, are right. Obviously, we're seeing that right now. If they don't do their job, we don't get any work, right? We make, the writers write the stuff that we're going to do. The thing that they're scared of right now is they've been hashing. This is the clip that'll make it somewhere, maybe. The writers are rehashing old stories, putting, different gender or whatever, like the formula is that they need to do to make an old story work, and they're not doing anything new. So they should be scared and be on strike right now, because an AI bot, Chat GPT 5 or whatever, could totally be given a whole slew of Hallmark movies and Christmas movies and be told, please write me a script that has this, and this, and it's a holiday movie where this happens. Here's your script. So we all hold ourselves. Nobody can make this creature or this like dragon that I did or this shot that I did or this effect that I did. No one can write this story that I did. And we're all getting our butts handed to us because AI is really doing it right now. Like you can type up, and I saw someone, there's an AI that I've been using to generate elements, and it's called ideogram.ai, I think. Check it out. It's
Wow.
pretty good
I'll
at
put
doing
up
like
some
fonts
B-roll.
and stuff. But like someone, like it has a feed, right? And people are typing stuff and you see what people are generating. And there was Jim Carrey as Wonder Woman. And it looked fantastic. Like it was like full real, like had the W and the whole, it looked amazing,
So this
dude.
is 3D modeling in the form of Chat GPT. Like,
Pretty much. So like the thing is, we all thought the first things to be automated would be, the things that we're seeing, right, is like cashiers but like the thing that can't be automated is the plumbers, the electricians, those jobs. We all thought that our creative side, right, art, music, which is being generated, no one saw that coming, that AI was going to do it better. Like I actually had a conversation with a previous boss, and I've kind of just said that AI is kind of bumming me out a bit because it's like I like that creative aspect that I can bring to the table and problem solving, whatever. And his response was, humans make too many mistakes. Like the AI can just composite all this stuff, and
Skynet
I
is
can,
better.
yeah. So it's like, so anyway, a long-winded response being that like all these writers hold themselves to a very high standard that if they don't write, the industry dies, and they hold us all kind of hostage right now because they are, the be all end all. And they're scared because they're threatened by somebody can type in, make me a script, and it will not only make you one, it'll make you 4 different variations of that
And it
script.
won't have a political agenda attached to it.
Any of that stuff. So it's like, um, and the artists and everything. So this strike is definitely eye-opening, and I kind of pointed it to like the writer's strike and everything. Your question was more on the artists. Um, you can try to stay ahead of it, and I I'm not into like what I just said, Jim Carrey as a da, 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 and having it generate everything but an element. Like I've had it generate like a series of 3D numbers or certain fonts because I'm terrible at motion graphic stuff. Like that's a very specialized, making like really good. Um, I go to like Zombieland style like motion graphics, right? Like it's a whole different world.
Chat GPT is helping me write my thesis. I'm over at Purdue University getting my thesis, and they have these like places I can go to have someone kind of help me, for free with it. Because there's parts of a thesis I'm like, I don't understand what this means. Assumptions, delimitations, limitations as far as research, according to my specific research. Like I could see an example, but I couldn't kind of like put it in my head how that would apply for my research. And then I just asked GPT. It's like, listen, I'm doing a compositing thing on edge blending. What would be one of the you think to be the delimitations of limitations? And it was like, oh, the limitations would be the fact that there's not a lot of professionals that would, I'm like, holy cow.
Wow.
Like, and it was just like, I didn't copy paste it, but it helped me understand the concepts of research, which is something I wasn't very familiar with. And it was
Yeah.
just literally, it was taking from specifically what I was doing, because I was asking other people. I'm like, I understand. I could look at your thesis and read your limitations, your delimitations, your assumptions, but that's for something that has to do with something that's not anywhere near the research I'm doing. But then when I asked ChatGPT it was like, this is an example, and it gave me like things that were relevant to the industry too. It wasn't just these things that were like off. It actually went and did its homework.
Yeah. And then you can say to it, explain it to me like I'm 12 years old.
Oh,
And it
really?
will. Oh yeah. Yeah, I've heard of people say that. They're like, They've
I'll have to try
asked
that.
the AI to explain how to tell a kid that Santa Claus doesn't exist, and it did it very rudiment.
Really?
And
Oh, I'm gonna try
yeah,
that tonight. I gotta.
um, so further to this, I've been thinking about this a lot. It's it's almost like fine, right? Like AI can totally write Hallmark movies. Fine. At some point, if everything, those scripts and all this stuff, and then the visuals, and we bring it into Unreal and it's all generated, I think that people will, you can almost point it to like music, and how, you know, some of that AI music that's being generated is good, but there's like a missing soul element to it. There's some, it's almost better when like Robert Johnson or something like super old and gritty. There's something more to it. And I think that that's what's going to happen with film. If you can think of it, there's like the stragglers or whatever. If you were talking about like this thing, you're going to shake off all the loose ones. It's like that. Like right now, all the Hallmark movies, all the people that we've hired just to fill roles, and like, they're out of school and they don't really know what they want to do. And oh, well, compositing could be a thing. All those people are going to fall away, right? As this industry kind of starts to close in a little bit, I think a lot of the people who are not here, that are not passionate about specifically what we do, I think they're going to fall away. And a lot of that is going to be done like roto artists and things like that. It's going to be done by AI.
That's what I was gonna
And
ask you. Like, okay,
but like my point, sorry, because I forget it. My point is like the people who write that amazing script, the like um I'm not even going to think of anything right now, but like the Back to the Future script or something. Those people are going to stick around. And the amazing, this is the one for the blockbuster of the year. There's going to be less of them, but there's going to be more focused, artistic, talented people building them, and less artisans and people who are just there filling the roles.
so in a way, we're kind of going back into time where the industry is almost going to be even more impossible to get into as a writer director,
Uh,
and
yeah.
the work is going to be like absolutely mind-blowingly amazing because it has to be. In a way, that's what's happening now. From what I understand, the studios are taking advantage of the strike and canceling. They just canceled Mindy Kaling's, like I think it was like $400 million. They canceled. The Warner Brothers canceled their contracts. They were looking to cancel the contracts because they have to wait 3 or 6 months out. They were licking their chops when they had the strike because they want to cut the fat. They want to get these
Yeah.
shows that are no good or contracts that they have. They want them gone,
Yeah.
and that's like a early kind of, to me, a picture of what is happening here. Is kind of like, and I'll be quite honest, I don't see a lot of really good shows. Maybe I'm too picky, but I'm just like, man, who's writing this stuff? It's not relevant to this generation. It's not relevant to my generation. It's so
No,
Hollywood bubble-esque, like, I'm like, I don't, this is you narcissists in Hollywood and the way you think. I don't think like this.
I've never been somebody like, again, I would ask certain people, like my supervisor or whatever, that question always comes up, why did you get into the industry? What movie sparked you or whatever? And only a couple times I got that that's a dumb question because it's obviously Star Wars. And I'm like, I don't like Star Wars. I like the old ones. But like when I was in school, episode 1 and 2 were coming out, I couldn't be bothered. And all the Marvel movies, and you know, where people are bouncing around. Matrix 1 was amazing. As soon as these hundreds of people coming on top of them, and everyone's punching each other, and there's no, they're not hurting each other. Like they're just, I, I, I've lost interest. There's no threat. And so I've always gone for like right now, greatest thing out right now, Painkiller. It's Netflix. It's on the drug opiate. But he was like, there's a good like interview with Peter Berg, the director and showrunner of that, and he was like, no one's gonna watch a documentary about OxyContin. So he made a drama about it, about true story and all that stuff. It's amazing. It's amazing. Like I would say probably right now Netflix is the best thing on there, in my opinion. And it's not VFX heavy. And then when I would talk to other VFX artists, all the movies we were talking about had invisible VFX. And that's the stuff I've always loved. I've always loved, although it's not, there people aren't praising you for your work because they can't see it. But it was always that no one knew it was there, and like everything. And that's when we went back to like the DAS grain thing and everything, like I prided myself in being able to match chromatic aberration. The grain on every channel is perfect. The fall off between the like shadows, midtones, highlights. So I use the advanced grain. It has a little like tolerance curve to it. Perfect. And I can like match anything with that. But um, as I said earlier, at some point you have to let people use the tools that they can use and let them do their work. But
Who are you to judge? Right.
yeah, exactly. If it matches and it goes through, like really,
Yeah.
like I've even had that. Like you can't be that supervisor that's like making notes on shots that are already approved or something, right? Like it's like that's specifically self. That's for you, not for anybody else. But
So do you believe where do you see this? Does anybody even know how many more months are left on this goofy strike, or what's your prediction? Have you heard anything? Or is there?
I mean, all these writers' strikes seem to end in the fall, don't they?
Do they? Okay.
It's
I was
usually
I
like a
was gonna I
summer
was going
long
back into
movie.
Wikipedia, looking up like the 1988. There was one a couple more years ago, just recently.
There was one that all the work went to Toronto and then they didn't like, working with the time difference. So it was kind of like after a while, we just started enjoying our summers off and then, going for a couple more hikes during the day and then coming back around to picking up. Because when the work came back, right, you're just being like, you know, 10-hour days beyond. Um, so I've sort of learned to enjoy the downtime a little bit. Um, It's funny because I'm always that person I've been self-employed for so long, on and off, that I'm always worrying about the next gig or the next job. And then when I kind of got used to this, the writer strike or whatever, and my wife would be like, before that, I'd be panicking and she'd be like, "Oh, you always find work and you'll be fine." And then the one year that I panic, or that I'm not panicking, I'm like, "Oh, it'll be fine." She starts panicking. Um, but it the streaming is still going to be a big demand. I just don't see myself going to the movie theaters to watch much anymore.
I saw Oppenheimer. That was it. I was like, okay, I'm going to see this in theaters. My dad knew a lot of people that were at the. He used to work for Los Alamos, so he knew a lot of people that were there. So I grew up my entire life being told stories about these people.
Yeah,
He knew Teller and all this, and so getting a first-hand account from my dad, who worked for these people, and then told me tons of stories about Los Alamos, the history of it. I had to go see it. I'm like, okay, I got to see this.
I definitely want to see that one as well. Again, it's like it's not a superhero bouncing down the road, and I just can't.
See, you and I are the same because I'm the same way. Everybody's loving these Marvel movies, and ever since even Avengers the first one, which I saw on a plane ride from going here to Denver, I think, or California, I don't know what it was, but I saw it in like a postage stamp size. I turned it off halfway through. I'm like, I don't like this. It's just
No, it's like I enjoy when they do something different. Like I did enjoy the Ant-Man and when they did the first Guardians, then when it becomes like, Guardians 5 or what, I don't know where it's at. I just can't. I would prefer to be taken away or like Oppenheimer, like some of the history kind of put into a nice digestible drama or whatever, right? A thriller. Um,
like Dune. We're waiting for Dune. That's it. That's all we got left.
mhm. I actually haven't watched Dune.
Oh, you
It
haven't
came
seen
out,
it?
I was really busy. Yeah, I think I was overseas doing some show or there was some reason I didn't get to see it yet. I really do want to watch it though, but uh,
You sound
That's
like a
just it.
busy
We're
man.
like on a screen all day long working, and then to sit down for hours and watch anything. I'm actually at that point in my life now where like sitting down for 2+ hours is kind of hard.
So you have a family, you're married,
Yep.
and you have a you sort of like established yourself um, in sort of like this sort of VFX supervisor, drone operator, and you know all these. You got your hand in a lot of pots and so forth. Um, so you honestly believe like my question was always going to be, and we're going to get to the questions by the audience that left some questions. But my question to you more than anything was the intricacies of visual effects compositing right now, even at advanced cleanup. Do you really
Mhm.
believe AI is going to be able to pull that all off someday?
Yep.
You really believe it?
Mhm.
So,
It already is. Like it just gets better and better. Like it's I was doing a story years ago. It didn't end up going anywhere, but it would have been great if it did because it's all the stuff that's happening right now. But I did a lot of research into life extension and AI and like Ray Kurzweil type stuff. And just seeing how fast even the most recent AI stuff has happened and how good it is, like at automatic cleanup and even your phone, right? Like the ones that have like the AI chips in them will remove people from walking behind your photo and stuff. Like have you played with the generative fill in Photoshop?
yes, we were fiddling with that as a production, and then uh, we of course couldn't, you know, because of the I don't know. Right now, I think they changed it though, because before it was like you cannot use this for commercial purposes, and being
Oh,
a
the beta, yeah.
responsible employer, you know, we were, you know, even though we as a studio were messing with it, we couldn't use it for any form of cleanup, obviously. Um,
That's gonna make its way into a lot of stuff. Like I had a shot, I was just testing it, and it was like it was at the racetrack. So we do a lot of like drift races and stuff. I am hoping to put a lot more VFX stuff on my channel, but it's definitely been drone heavy lately. Um, but it was a picture of like the starting line at a racetrack. It's sunset. There's like trees, and then like the concrete barricades, and then the pits. I did a little roto along the concrete barricade and kind of like the background, and then just typed in mountains. Boom, it's there. It's got the right sunset, the right lighting, and then in the little thumbnails, there's 4 different variations of it. Okay, city. It looks like you're now like there's a city and the racetrack's going through the city. Like it, and then I picked up one of the cars and I said tow truck. Boom, here's 4 different tow trucks. Some of them didn't look right. Some of the tow truck part was like smeared and the, like it's not there yet, but it's in beta.
but see,
Hasn't now, like
s-
what happens next year
I still have an issue with moving images, though. I can look at a still image and go,
for now?
that's incredible." I know for now we can't. We could sit here and say, you know, digital will never take over film.
But
Film is
like, let me
forever. You
put it
know, I
this
mean, you
way.
know, it's
One of the parts of my career path that I didn't mention is like I after the werewolf show and bringing a lot of practical effects, I worked for a costume shop or whatever, a monster shop, whatever you call it, prosthetics. And they wanted to merge VFX and doing prosthetics together, which I thought was brilliant. I wish I'd gone somewhere. Um, but what I wanted to do is we have the werewolf costume. And as we're developing it, they're going to do molds and print. And they're going to like put all the hair in. They're going to do all the work to build this practical suit. But when I went into the project, I had one side going, oh, they spent all this money on the suit and we're going to like pay the same amount to remove it. And then we're going to pay the same amount to put a CG one in. It's going to cost 3 times the amount of money. It was all this complaining. And I was like, I can't go into a show with this like vibe. Like I need to like go in and be on board. The showrunners wanted this. They want it to be practical. We need to work with them. Like all this like stuff I'm hearing from other people, I can't do it. So coming up with that approach, they wanted to work with me more. And I started looking at AR like augmented reality. And this was back 2017, 2018. So there was a lot of motion tracking being done. So I had like, with webcam, you could walk into my living room, and then inside of, I think I was using not Unreal, but the other one, Unity. And then you'd have tracked like all of the, like even the fingers and everything, all in real time. So, and that was a long time. I was using OpenPose, I think it was called, and TensorFlow and a bunch of these things. So the idea was to use that and then have people come into our facility and have the actor walk into the center of the room and then be able to show people, so here's the tracking, and we're going to apply that costume onto them. And then as everybody's looking at them and they're walking around and doing stuff, they could be like, we want it larger. Okay, here you are. We want it bigger. We want it. And start, working on this thing, take that 3D model and then build the molds and stuff was kind of the idea. But like that came about because of you mentioning motion. And it's just a matter of time. Like they can dissect with just hardly any frames, probably the depth of things once it starts knowing like we have AI that does upscaling of things, right? Like even in your video games, all your trees are low res, and then they give it, this is what a high res tree should look like, and it upscales them. So with all of these things coming together, AI and generative fill and motion tracking and all these things just have to talk nice together. And it's not game over. It's just you have to learn how to work with it.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know. It's just something about the fact that I've worked on a couple shows. Like we worked on this one show for Netflix with you couldn't even track the footage. It was ridiculous. It was we were doing an entire arena replacement for a big. It was like a giant video game conference, like battle royale or whatever, and the entire arena had to be filled with crowds, and we had to do tracking, and there was nothing to track. I'm thinking to myself, like, yeah, 3D tracking is going to get better, but
Mhm.
still, there's comes a point where you're over there hand animating because you can't see nothing back there. Not to say that someone can't bring in a couple of glow sticks, and you'll be able to
Oh
track
yeah,
points,
anything would help, right? But
Yeah.
it's like everything is connected, right? This goes back to like when we were doing these like intricate car comps, and they wanted these, like this was like for Red, I think. Uh, and it was like it was the first time figuring out how to work with volumes like as a tracking source, right? Your point clouds and stuff, because at least as that thing left frame, right, it's connected to something else, and it all. So I mean, like what you're talking about with 3D, and I'm sure they have it, right? There's pattern recognition that's already in those for all those points, right? It's looking for patterns around it. But as those neural networks and things grow, and we harness the GPUs that come out that have that specific processing on them, and I'm like again looking at that Ray Kurzweil. It was like the book I was reading was Age of Spiritual Machines. And we've always thought of ourselves as very special, right? No one will ever beat someone at chess. No computer will be able to beat someone at chess. Or I think the latest being like decades ago now, because it was when I was still a compositor. A computer beat someone at the Chinese Go, something like that, and then also trained another computer to play it better than we trained the. So it's just like, it's it, and I think his predictions were like $1,000 worth of technology will emulate the power of the human brain by 2040, and by like just before 2080, a penny's worth will emulate all humans on Earth. So just not to go down a rabbit hole, but just with that and his predictions being pretty accurate, and you know, we're entering what he calls the age of accelerating returns, where we know that we're doomed, but the benefits are too good to stop going down this path. Um, I just don't see any of that. Like, no AI will generate, a symphony better than Beethoven, or, any of these things. It's not true. And so like, if you are not by default special, you need to start figuring out what makes you special. Like, why are you the person that someone wants to hire to go out on set and make sure that the footage is captured properly and brought back? Why are you that person? Why are you the person to put the stadium into that shot, like, or to take that sequence on? Or I think people, if they want to survive the AI and the contraction that's going to happen in the industry, we need to start separating ourselves out and show ourselves as individual artists and not just a group of 500 compositors that can, crush like doing Brodo or something. Like, I just don't think it's not even India there or China or Singapore or any of these places that have taken the jobs. It's just AI.
Or become plumbers.
That, or yeah, a plumber would be like I just had a little water leak and I think the guy came in to tell us that it's not a plumbing issue. It was like on the dishwasher and he turned the water off and it was $500.
Well, I even heard
In
that
less than 30 minutes.
these unions, electrical and plumber and all that, they're the people, the age group is like 40s and 50s, not even 20s and 30s, because they can't retire. You know.
It's smart, man. And if you could think of a way to, like I have a friend who's using drones that have like this cage around them and they do inspections of pipelines and stuff like that. Like, there's something that I'm sure, again, with just the amount of data and footage and stuff that we manipulate, there's so many avenues, I think, that people aren't thinking about. Like, we are really good at doing that stuff. And when we do it for so long, and then yeah, AI is doing some of it now, but we forget kind of how tricky that stuff is. And when you get someone on set that you're talking to, like, yeah, I don't know, that just goes above my head. Like, they just don't even, want to try to decipher what we're doing. It looks like magic to them still. So I believe that there is different avenues for like stuff, but I also really highly think that it's going to contract. Like, we're not going to see tons of 1,000 people studios anymore. I mean, maybe I'm wrong. And
I always thought the closure of the Singapore ILM was sort of like the trigger point. I know that sounds kind of weird. People, it's just a fluke, but I'm already starting to hear. I don't know if you're hearing in Vancouver. I've heard of like crazy layoffs going on in Vancouver. Is
I've
that
heard of
all?
some.
Some, okay, not much.
Again, I've been pretty busy. I haven't been noticing it. I have a couple friends who are jumping back and forth between like DD and Scanline because they have projects, and it's just like a group of artists are going from one to the other. I've heard Sony was hiring. So I mean, the big studios still have a couple things coming in, but it's just they get a lot of mouths to feed, and I would feel much better being in a boutique studio that has some good connections with some good producers and clients that bring them in, like, one or two solid projects a year that would feed 10, 20, 30 artists. That'd be my goal.
That's where I'm at right now, actually.
Well, then congratulations. I think you're living the dream because I always preferred that style of a studio. Um, it's popping in my head because we were talking about Tool before we get on to any other stuff. I wanted to mention that in that Edge tool, you have to cut this up or something. That tab that I mentioned, the blending, as I was going down through it, it might be something you want to look into a bit more deeply, because I created that tab to emulate a workflow that wasn't really a tool, but basically we were doing a lot of car comps that were nighttime, and they wanted to see when the lamp post would go by that, it was on green screen or whatever. But as we put in the footage and the lamp posts go by, they wanted to see that light wrap around the face and like kind of bleed through the motion blur, the defocus and stuff. So what that section does is it takes the matte or the core matte and then kind of inverts it and allows you to choke in a selection, and then it will take the background and either there's I think it's called Mix FG Luma, but basically on one side to the other, it will blend the whole background through it. Or if you slide that to the other side where there is no luminance coming through, it's basically the YCBCR method that we all use. I don't know if I've ever used that, but basically if you convert your footage into a YUV, YCBCR, basically separating your chroma and your luma, you're able to, like, genes and stuff that might have moire on it. If you blur the chroma, right, you get rid of those like banding. And then for jaggies and stuff, like, you can blur the luminance and keep the color. So the idea with this is it kind of separates the two. And if you had, let's say, green spill on someone's hair, you could choke in that selection and get the blonde hair or whatever it is, and then extend that out. So you'd smear that color out like an edge extension, but it's just smearing the chroma. So all the little hair details and stuff are maintained. So there might be something there with your automatic despill where you can keep all the hair detail, but just get rid of those casts of color. That'd be my...
What I'm going to do, if you don't mind, and I'll send the video to you before I release it, is I think I'm going to try to do a layman's term breakdown of your tool. Of course, full credit goes to you, obviously. But
Yeah.
I've been examining and poking and prodding, and that's what my expertise has always been, to do a little bit more of a layman's understanding. Although you did a great job in your demo. It's very
It's long though.
self-explanatory.
I need to do another one and condense all those down because I have like a Flickr tool one I did. And I've got a couple tools that I should post out there, mainly the Flickr, and there's another one called Deform. I think I called it Deform. I like keeping them simple, but basically you can plug in any element and it converts that into vectors that then drive distortions. So basically, it's it's based on my heat distortion plugin, which is called Heat, which was also just a compiled plugin of a guy from Scanline or something, I believe. But basically, uh, heat distortion plugins used to always use positive values, so it always go up and to the right, I believe. Yeah. So I wanted an omnidirectional one, and we found a guy explained how to do it. So I created this tool. I can send it to you. Maybe I'll put it out. But basically, it takes what is it? It takes noise, right? And then moves them in the directions as you spread it. And then it does a minus. And because of the minus, it gives you negative and positive values. So I took that same idea, and instead of noise, you just plunk in your like fire or whatever. And it does the same thing where it offsets them and then minuses them together and gives you the negative and positive. And then you can see, like, it looks like liquid or whatever, like propane gas or whatever. You can see it kind of moving. But we ended up developing that because we were doing Lethal Weapon, and there were these people that were jumping away from an explosion and they had cables. So we ended up taking a still frame right of the back wall before the explosion, and then there was an actual explosion in there. So there's all this like distortion that went over the back. So we cleaned out, put the back wall back in, covered up the flames, and painted out the stuff, and then we just took the original plate and plugged it back into this deform, and then it re-put all the like gas distortions and stuff on the back wall. So it may be worth visiting some of these again and making sure they go out there.
Okay, so we are going to wrap this up with Q&A. We only have a couple questions here. So let me get the questions here if I can find them. Okay. The first one is from Madlooks VFX, and he asks, Edge is the best. It's the total game changer for me, and I'm a big fan of your drone cinematography. By the way, I'm curious, what's the latest big thing in the VFX industry? Any cutting edge tools or technologies making waves right now, or according to you?
I mean, it's like the new stuff, obviously, we kind of delved into is the AI and harnessing little bits of that. I'm not a fan of like the AI stuff as a one solution, but something that helps you here and there. Might like we're talking about like AI, maybe there's like pattern recognition and helping other tools. But a lot of stuff for me, it just goes back down to like the basics. Like I make a lot of stuff out of just noise. Like I'll find ways of like blending noise together and then glowing and gain it a certain way. And I've made like sparks out of it. So like I really do like to break. I think that's the power of Nuke, right? Over like an After Effects or whatever, is like transform, blur. Like it's just, you can really break things down into its fine elements. So I'm kind of a simple person that way. Um, when I was doing a little bit more comp supervision over VFX supervision, it was I was trying to push a lot of people to use the grid warp tracker, which no one seems to use, but is amazing. Like, I know it's an older tool at this point, but like a couple years ago, no one was using it, and it just adds in, the grid warp and the vector tracking stuff, and that stuff has just been like, as soon as like the um is it vector distort? They keep changing the names of the smart vectors, I think. Distort. Whatever that is, when that came out, it was game changer for us for doing beauty work, and we were able to like track stuff into clouds and like, so just a combination of all of that stuff, the tracking, like you kind of mentioned earlier, like movement is always kind of the,
Well,
you can do so much
honestly,
with a still image,
I
but
believe that's going to be fixed when we get these Leica cameras incorporated into smaller units. The things that were capturing depth. I think once you get that, I'm assuming it could.
who bought that? I remember um, being really interested in it. And I got to hold and got to use actually while I was over at that prosthetics place. They had like a back room we were trying to clear out that had a whole bunch of just legacy junk in there. We're going to turn it into a VFX studio. And he had Lytra cameras. Is it Lytra? He was Lytra. I think it was Lytra. But there's also Lytra as a, I have the lights like for like lighting, so that might be wrong. But I remember when that technology came out, and that's exactly what I wanted, was like just being able to use like a Z slice, right? And then just like cut up the depth. I know DJI also has on their like 4D, and they're licensing that tech out. There's these two little probes that go on the top of cameras, and then you can see basically your whole scene from top down because it's like capturing the depth. So like for a focus puller, they can see where the person's eyes are because they'll see like the head, and actually be able to put the focus point, and tracking is incredible with it. But back to the Lytra stuff, I'm calling it Lytra. It might be called something else. But I remember they had the little small camera that had the depth that it was capturing the points or whatever, it had to be long. And then they had a built-in lens version I was kind of interested in, but the sensor tech was still too low res. So like you were basically getting like 10 megapixel, 8 megapixel pictures out of it still. And then they came out with a production camera, which was like, I don't know, 100 grand. Yeah, and it had its own, again, built-in lens. And I'm like, the first thing just being on set, I'm like, no one's going to use that. Because like you have to let them use the lenses they want. Like I'd say the main thing that a DP is going to like, a list of priorities, right? Lighting and lenses, like obviously. And to just they have to use this zoom lens thing that's built in and works better for VFX. Yeah, it's not going to happen. Um, but like you're saying, if they could find a hybrid way, I forget who bought it, but the technology was bought out like a long time ago now. I was still at Lux back then. It was before Cosa. Um, but yeah, I mean, like I guess I don't know if his question was just basically about like nuke tools and stuff. Like I find generating elements using these online AI tools to build, like even I mean that would be amazing. Imagine that actually. I just thought of it. Like you can go into openart.ai, right, and say what you want to see. We said Jim Carrey as Wonder Woman. If that does develop into, I want to see a 3/4 bonfire, and it does the animation of it, and you could like generate your own stock library, holy crap. Um, but that stuff has a lot of potential. Like stock is always an issue, right? Um, and then on the onset side of things, a lot of new cameras and lenses, or like there's something that they'll plug in, but it's capturing the lens data like in the actual files now. Yeah, so there's like, or like people will start writing them on, but I know like for a while I would have to walk around like every take and like, oh, you changed the lens, I can take down all the like lens info so we know what we're looking at, or you you'll start misjudging what lenses. But I've been seeing a lot of that stuff getting recorded, like into the dailies and everything. So
Wow.
yeah.
Well, the last question we have, besides one person saying, another person just says beautiful. So I
Lovely.
don't know.
Thank you.
So the Jerashi 333 says, so the question is, we have Tony Lyon's keying template in what he explained very well about edge blending section, and personally, I've always tried to avoid edge extend when doing keying. Is this tool have some different technique that we don't know? Obviously, they may not be familiar with your tool.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with his, but always, right? Like, again, we look at the difference between degraining everything and then regraining and doing all that stuff at the end, or going in and being very specific. And this is like, certain ways of doing different operations. You'll have to, like, you can introduce, um, doubling grain, static grain, dark edges, light edges, all of these things, right? So the more that you can just do it to the whole plate, I understand that side of it, but it does take a certain mastery to, if you're doing cleanup and stuff, I'd always break everything off to the side, right? And even if like you're doing like, I don't paint a lot. I use the transform mask where I'll just take masks and move the stuff over. And then I'll copy those masks, alpha channels, and feed it through, and then just end up with a bunch of floating dots of stuff that I've cleaned up. And then regrain, like, and do it properly, right? And then match it. So it's really, to that point, you have to be really good at matching your stuff, or you'll see the dots of grain that you haven't, mismatched, or like the softening. You've got all these filter hits or whatever it's going to be. So all of that to say, you always want to try to achieve these things in keying, right? You want to not alter the pixels you don't need to alter. So if you can use the IBK and it gives you that little blend that brings the chroma or the luminance through the blurry edges, and then you want to merge your core mat on top. If you want to try to do a lot of that stuff by tinting your edges, or pushing a heavy D-spill through there, those are all techniques. This is another way of smearing that edge through, and over other ones, edge gives you the possibility to blur the edge out on pre-malt, blur, and then it gets soft, and that works really well for fast moving, large motion blur, soft edges, or using that iteration, which will maintain the pixel accuracy, and then that works a little bit better for fine details. Keeping someone's side of their face, they don't have a beard there, you don't want it to be, a smear of gray, you want it to maintain. So further to that, you could, that would be black to gray, but in some instances I've used that blending edge where I'm actually not doing like any edge extension. I'm kind of leaving all that stuff at one, and then I'm using the blending side of things, and I'm pulling that mat in, wrapping the background around, and then using the that part that I mentioned to you where you separate luma and chroma, and then just extending the chroma. Big fan of that. That's like, you just see that green go away, and then you get the color. So, it's like anything. There's 4 or 5 different ways to do it. This is something that over time evolved again from having a roto of someone, and then the edge of the background where they've been pulled from, and us going through and literally either I think it was like we'd either frame by frame do that paint technique, so just edge extending manually, or we would do a thing. I think I started transforming the plate by like a pixel, and then merging those together, and then blending them, and then my supervisor's like, oh, there was a tool, and we drew that. I wish I had it. I'll have to find it someday and publish it out there. Version 1. But he, over my shoulder, was like, it was this, it was an unpremalt, this, and then he even explained how you would maintain the core. So that whole section that has the actual edge extension and how it goes together was all him. And then the differences that evolved are the iterations, the YCBCR. Um, there was another thing. Oh, the grain. So that generating the edge mat's huge. Everyone should use it. It gives you this like white edge. You plug it into your grain mat. It just grains the edge. And there was something else. The exponential, all that stuff was built when I made the iterations. Um, there's another part to this tool I'm forgetting. Oh, and then so before, previously, in earlier versions, you had to, even if you had roto or like a key that you were given, you'd have to plug that into all of the inputs. So it was like your foreground, and then you'd plug that into the soft mat, the core mat, or you get an error. And then um, I can't remember what tool I pulled that from, but it was a tool. Oh, it was that amazing tool. If you've never used it, um, you plug in a texture and it puts it along the edge of your roto. Do you know what I'm talking about? The fractal blur. Yeah, get that guy on if he has not been on. That is a cool plugin. You were able to put in like, I think I still use his background. It's like ice that's got scratches on it, and you plug it in and then it makes grass. So I've used it for like hair. I'll put like a distortion on the like texture and it makes like wispy stuff.
This looks
Um,
like Richard Frazier. Is that, am I correct on
that
that?
might be right. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So he's the next guy. If you're out there, Richard, I'm coming after you. So
Yeah. Amazing. Yeah. I promote you to come on because that tool, I think I use it in like I have a tool called Muzzle, which I don't know if I have released. And you basically plug a roto shape into it and it creates a muzzle flash. So I'll send you the gizmo.
oh
You
my
can
gosh, we could have
take a
used
look
that.
at it.
We did
But like,
what it was. It was HBO Max, uh, not DC comic movie TV show. Just recently, but we could use that.
yeah, no, I'll send it
Yeah.
to you after this. I'll just copy paste it. And that's the thing with this, right? The tool's not locked. So like Edge was always meant to go out there and at some studios I'd leave it there so that everyone would use it. And then after I left, it would annoy people that my tools were still being used. But and then it got put into the toolkit, which that was
You're
really cool.
fired. We'll take your tools.
Yeah, delete that tool. But uh it's always been unlocked and I haven't really checked back on Nukepedia as much as I should, but it's always any studio I've been at, any artists I've worked with, it's always been the reason why the tool is the way it is because I've been recommended to do it a certain way, and I think that was probably in a supervisor sense, probably the biggest thing I learned as a supervisor is being welcoming to other people's ideas. So it's unlocked for you to build this up your own way if it um, morphs into something different being in the toolkit, that's welcomed. I'd love to see it kind of evolve along with Nuke and maybe there'll be an AI part of it where it'll actually detect where it needs to remove the background. It'll extend it for you. But um, as I said, I've always intended on making a new version that had that distortion method and it's always been kind of really heavy. And I bet you with Blink script. Oh, have you had Mads on? Mads Hagbarth. I probably said his last name wrong, but he has tools that are amazing as well.
Okay, I got a list of people now because
Yeah,
I've
I
been
can tell you
kind of
so many.
like
I like
I've
the
been
reason why I
stuck in
bring these
my
people up. So
thesis for so long that I've been like I better get back to like putting stuff on my channel. People are like,
well,
what?
Mads made like point renders. If you ever used, I've got it here, Higgs, I think it's called HigX. It's like a point renderer tool set that he released out for people that just is incredible. He made some like, I've been waiting for it because I've been trying to do clouds in Nuke forever, but he has like clouds he generated. The guy's a genius. So I would look at he has a Vimeo channel that he puts a lot of his experiments on. And I believe he's got like doing that stuff, extending but keeping hair detail. So he probably has some things that could take Edge to the next level. I bet you he has tools that would just blow this thing out of the water. But Mads is another guy. Yeah, he's just a brilliant guy.
You're actually helping me with my thesis, because my thesis is all about like creating the next, or at least, try trying to do automated tool sets. Obviously, AI will eventually do it for us, but just trying to get a thesis done, basically, because it's a requirement for a master's, and it's just like I want to do something fun and not be boring.
Yeah, exactly. Well, there's things like this that, I mean, I have that benefit of seeing these little bits of technology that come out. Like there's one that was like a subsample renderer. That's all I'll really say. But it developed from a guy that his parents, I believe, were doing like recoloring of like old films and stuff, and then they took some. So these things evolve into like I was gonna say. So the muzzle, all these things have a point, but muzzle takes the fractal blur, and it does like so. I think I took noise and created, or no, another artist, and I took this and ran with it, and we found a way to recreate the tinderbox noise, and then I can't package something, so we basically just recreated what that was doing, and it looked like these kind of stuff you would get from like a muzzle flash, right, with fire and everything, and so we, you know, layering all that stuff up and getting like a wall of fire. You'll see it when I send it to you. And then you plug the roto in, and then it takes the fractal blur, which is like three different layers of it, a small, a medium, and a wide. And then so that breaks up that roto, and you get this like flame that comes out. And it's I've used it plugging in mats from CG where like things are collapsing and they reveal holes and it looks like explosions. I've used it for muzzle flashes. I've used it for just fire in general. Um, this might open up some ideas for you, because it's a lot of, again, a lot of things I develop. I'm not smart like Mads, where he can like, I'll just program like the Blink script that's going to do this thing 1,000 times faster than the Nuke renderer does it. But I can take like noise and like randomness and these ideas, and just having that past of, you need to make this superhero effect, or you need to make this disappearing effect for years. I've just been really good at taking simple ideas and just building enough complexity into those simple ideas that it becomes something that looks like a muzzle flash. Yeah. Yeah. Remind me. Send me an email. If you have any of those things I mentioned, and I can fire off some of those tools that might help you, and try to get them out to the community now that you've kind of reawoken this. I've been more focused
The Kraken has
uh,
awaked.
on well, other stuff, and it's just like you develop these tools like Flickr that I think I have a video on. Is way too long, but it was like it was built to take out automatic ISO and white balance issues in cameras back in the day. So it was like flickering blue and yellow, and I had footage I needed to rescue, and it was like in that search I found that people were using the flickers based off the curve tool. Everybody was kind of using the curve tool that had told me how to use this thing, right? You analyze brightness values, and everybody's just multiplying the values that came out of that by like 10 or 100, trying to make it one, instead of the simple thing that finally, after like, going down these rabbit holes with it, the one person I found was using it right. They put it in the gain and the white point, and then you frame hold one of them, and it either deflickers or flickers. So I created this tool Flickr that just simplified it. Everyone's using it wrong. Let's just make it a drop down that says this is deflicker and this is add flicker, and then it ended up building into bigger things. Like we had like car comps, again, are a really good one to test things on. Cop car lights, red, blue, red, blue, but there's a green screen behind it. So we had to get rid of the window, put a window back in, and put in the red and the blue. So this tool, I can send it to you as well, Flickr, we would just take a red constant and a blue constant. We just analyze the plate and then put it on, and it flashed the plate that we put in behind with the red and the blue as it, and it just automatically would time it right and do it to the right brightness and all that stuff. So um, everyone's doing these things already, but sometimes there's a way to simplify it.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for coming on and taking your time out of
Thank
your
you.
busy schedule. Thanks for giving us the insight. I'm going to look into the plumbers union.
It's not all doom and gloom. It's not, but I just can't see knowing myself as a moviegoer. And yeah, and just hearing all the layoffs and stuff. I would rather hear success stories than all the people getting laid off and not having their own thing. So just like prepare yourself, develop and hone your skills, and you know, be in it for the art and for yourself, not for you know. I just less McDonald's, more, you know.
That's McDonald's
I
quality.
was gonna say prime rib, but not everybody loves, like meat. So, like better better stuff out there to be made, I think, than just like churning out stuff that could be done by AI. So we're better than that. But thanks, Matt. Please reach out. Let me know if you need me to remind you any of those tools or the people that you should interview.
And we'll link all of your different websites and so forth and information at the bottom. So
Yeah, a little scattered, but I'm definitely in the process of honing all that stuff in and trying to do a little crossover. I promise, actually, I'm trying to put you're lighting a fire under my butt. I have like zero VFX stuff on my YouTube lately, and I promise to change that.
cool. I'm glad I'm doing something. All
Absolutely.
right.
Good luck with your thesis, and I'll hope to talk to you again soon.
All right. Thank you. Thanks.